What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to Resistance is Futile with me, Taylor Knighton. You guys know this is where I share my womanhood stories, my faith stories, in hopes to create this community where we can be honest and real with each other so that we can all grow and develop together. I always say this in the words of a really famous rapper. If you know who he is, you know. You cannot run from the pain. You've got to run towards it. Hence, resistance is futile. First of all, let me just start by saying this is my third time recording this video. So it's been a struggle. Y'all didn't see me last Monday, which y'all usually see me on Mondays. And maybe that was just God saying, redo it, rework it, be better. And so that's what we're going to do. I had last week or the week before last taken a poll on my Instagram page. If you haven't seen my Instagram page, you should follow me at taylork.speaks because I like to do polls and I like to figure out what is resonating with people and what people actually want to hear and talk about. And so that's the platform where I get that information from. Of course, always nice to like, click, and subscribe. Write in the comments down below what you like, what isn't resonating, what is resonating. I can take it. I'm a grown woman. I've been through a few things. I can take a hit or two. Not physically. Okay. But anyways, based on the poll, I had a few topics in mind. And you all thought that this was the most important, or at least relevant at the time now, something that y'all want to hear about, and something that I, in fact, have a little bit of insight on based on my own personal experience. So, this episode is going to be called A Familiar Hell or the Unknown Heaven. A familiar hell or the unknown heaven. This is going to be about patterns, breaking negative pattern cycles, and building routines that are for our own good, are pushing us in the direction which we want to go. So I've had multiple periods of my life where I've stayed stuck by choice, okay? Because the effort required for me to change was either too great or too unfamiliar. There is a quote by Tony Robbins, which my therapist shared with me, and it changed me eventually. It didn't immediately change me, but it definitely stuck with me, which changed me. And the quote is, "Change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change." When I was in my seasons of doing the same things, not making any change, it was because the pain, quite frankly, wasn't big enough and I wasn't fed up enough. The last episode, I talked about dating the same kind of guy and being hit in the head multiple times until I got the lesson. And you just are in a pattern of repeat, and it's a cycle of self-abuse almost, because you're not getting the lesson. You're not understanding, you're not learning, you're not progressing, you're not moving forward. I have been in situations, honestly, where I was depressed. I was in a pattern of depression because I remember when pandemic started, I wasn't able, there were days where I couldn't get out of bed because I just wasn't happy with myself. And I was having negative thought cycles. Even when it comes to like diet and exercise. Since pandemic, I've probably gained 30 pounds. I've talked about that multiple times. But I didn't, in the season where I was accepting things, I didn't have the discipline to make the change for myself. Even when it came to seeing myself as great and being able to do the things that I know that I'm good at, I was not able to execute. How about, like, say, starting this channel? I was not able to do that because I didn't have the internal self-esteem that I needed. And I had patterns, negative patterns that were keeping me stuck in the same place of repeat. So when did my life change? My life changed, like my therapist needed to point out, when the pain of being stuck was too severe. I got to a point in my life where I no longer wanted to be okay with just life happening to me. Because life doesn't just happen to you. We have choices that we have to make in order for our lives to manifest in the way that we want them to be. It's not just a pile on. It's not just inactionable items. It's about doing the work to get the results that you want. And when it came to my dating life, when it came to my diet and exercise, when it came to depression and not feeling good enough and feeling too sad, I had to make change. And I knew it. I knew that I had to do something different, do multiple things different. And I knew that I was going to have to be disciplined enough to stick with the change, whatever it was going to be. So I had become exhausted from the last man who did me dirty. I had become exhausted of binging, putting myself in food comas and binging, eating whatever I wanted to eat, having no consequences, and or thinking that I would have no consequences, and realizing shortly after that I couldn't move. And the emotional toll of that was a lot more cumbersome than the actual feeling of like being stuffed by food. I remember the last tears I cried of having an unfulfilled life and thinking to myself that I have a 9-to-5, I'm earning money, I'm doing things that, don't really appease me in this life. And I had had enough of that because I knew that I wasn't living in my fullest potential. I knew that I wasn't doing what God had called me to do. I knew that I wasn't being pushed and motivated in a way that was fulfilling and exciting. And it had to change. What I thought about was when I needed to make changes to myself, because in hindsight, I can look back and be like, oh, all these things I did because I'm in the midst of the changes and I'm seeing the effects of them. But while you're in it, it's hard to sort of establish what things are causing you to stay stuck. I recognized, looking back now, I recognized that there were 3 emotional patterns that I had in my life that were causing me to be stuck. The first one was staying connected to people out of loneliness, and not because the relationship was actually satisfying or beneficial. And that is platonic or romantic relationships. I had a friendship that was 12-year-long friendship. And I realized not just that the relationship wasn't serving me, but I don't think that it was serving the friend. I do believe that we were growing apart. Our interests were changing, and there is nothing wrong with that. That is a life thing that happens. People just grow apart. But I realized that a part of me was just holding on to this because I felt like I needed a friend. I felt like I needed to have somebody I related to, but I wasn't relating to this person. And then as you start adulting, you realize you just don't, things that aren't fulfilling, you don't make time for. And I wasn't making the time for because I felt like the friendship wasn't beneficial for either of us. And that became clear not only to me, but also to her. And obviously, like in romantic relationships, very easy for me to hold on to guys, not guys, like multiple guys at a time, but like throughout the course of my history and relationships, I've always, almost to the very bitter end, wanted to stick and grasp and hang on to the bitter roots of whatever the relationship was because of its history and not because of its present satisfaction over my life. It's so easy to just hang on to things because of the memories of it, right? But like, is that enough? Is the memory enough? Or should there be memory in addition to a continued forward movement and satisfying benefits for both people, for both parties? And I definitely made a habit of just being like, well, I used to say to myself, I want to make sure that before I leave any relationship, I know that I gave it my all. And that's a great motto to have if the other person is doing the same thing. Like, it is great to want to cling and hold on to a relationship if both parties are equally invested. But if that is a one-sided thing, you will find yourself in a pattern of forgiveness that is not beneficial to you. And it's also not beneficial to the other person because basically it says that bad behavior or mundane behavior, lack of progress is okay. That works for no one. So that definitely was an emotional pattern that I was stuck in. Just clinging on to relationships that no longer served me or the other person. I wasn't selfish decisions. Sometimes, actually, maybe some of them were. But I think for the most part, I had to consider both sides. Myself first, and then the other person, what that does to them. My enabling, so to speak. The second emotional pattern that I had was a continual and subconscious internal dialogue that was negative and toxic. Ever since I was young, it's been very easy to be the hardest person on myself. In fact, I know until even now, I am so hard on myself. Most of the time, if anybody makes a critique, I need the critiques. But if anybody makes a critique, it's not like something I haven't heard or thought of for myself. Likely, I have already played that scenario in my head 20 times and be like, yeah, that's something I want to work on. It's something I need to be better at. And so I beat myself up with the dead horse. But the negative self-talk always has stemmed from self-esteem problems from youth, just worthiness, all these things that I struggled with. And that didn't change until I got some guidance. And I'm going to talk about the guidance after I mention this third point, this third emotional pattern, which was making excuses for my procrastination. Or even worse, being the victim of my own story and not taking accountability of my own life. Procrastination is self-explanatory. Pushing off until you can't anymore, until you've reached a point of failure. It has always been a thought in my brain to do a YouTube channel, right? To have this platform. And it's been put into my brain by people in my life who thought that this was something I would be great at. I I literally buried that in the back bottom. Y'all remember that episode of SpongeBob? I don't know what the whole scenario is about, but there's a scene where he goes into his own mind and he's like going through the file cabinets looking for like a piece of information that he forgot. I buried my dream, my desires, something that I thought I was good at, but just didn't think I was good enough to do it. Buried it so far deep that it wasn't accessible anymore until I realized I hit the wall of realizing that my life wasn't satisfying. I wasn't fulfilling the creativity that God gifted to me. It is a gift to be able to share. It is a gift to feel good enough to want to uplift and help others. That is a gift that I have been sitting on for so long. And then being the victim of my own story. I talk about, and I have talked about, the pain of others, how I was raised, pathology, certain things that have come up in my childhood that currently affect how I am as an adult, which most people can say that they have things that happen to them that are young that sort of steered the way that they might be in relationships to themselves or to others. All of that is true, right? It is all true that we have things that have affected us that can still currently affect us. But I've always heard this. There comes a point in your life where you have to decide if you are going to use those things that have affected you to become your crutch, or if you're going to use it as fuel to push you forward and make a different choice. I got to a point where I realized I was making excuses for myself. And I was being the victim of my own story. I was pointing. You did this wrong. You did this wrong. You did this wrong. And I wasn't looking at the 4 other fingers that were pointing back at me saying, these are the things that you could do to make your life better, as opposed to always projecting and pointing the finger. So those are the 3 emotional patterns on a big scape, on a big landscape, that I could say heavily kept me stuck in turbulence, in defeat, in sadness, in sorrow, almost like willful ignorance, almost like just deciding that this is the circumstance of my life without making the efforts to change it. Things that I did to change these patterns were monumental. Some were very small steps. So when I talk about change and when I think about change, I am someone who loves a fresh start. I know that change can be scary to a lot of people, and it is scary to me sometimes too, obviously, like creating a platform like this, scary. But when I think about any time that I've gone on a mission to like you lose a couple pounds or lose a lot of pounds, I love a fresh start. I'm somebody who loves a Monday, right? Monday is like, I love a Monday because Monday feels like, even though I might get the Sunday scaries depending on what's going on at work, I'm still feeling enthusiastic that I get a new opportunity to do something different about my week. So Mondays always felt like, okay, good. Whether I was like dieting and I'm like, okay, I'm starting on a Monday. Monday's the day to revamp. And these fresh starts are all great. But the way that I was setting up my fresh starts, I was setting myself up for failure. You know why? Because I was doing things that were not sustainable or attainable. Meaning anytime when I just think about like the dieting and exercising thing, I would like feel sad. Of course, it was like off of a thought of like feeling sad, maybe off of a binge, and being like, I gotta do something about this. I gotta do something about this. And be like, you know what? I've got an idea. I'm gonna cut carbs out for the rest of my life. Now y'all know that don't make no sense. It don't make no sense. It's not possible. And if it is possible, it ain't smart. I can guarantee you that. So I'll give myself these monumental goals that were, one, not necessary, and two, not even likely attainable. And I was setting myself up for failure. And so when I think about now in hindsight, and as I'm currently working on changes in diet, changes in being, going from anxious attachment to secure attachment, which was my last episode. Those kind of changes, emotional and external physical changes, right? You've got to start with small, attainable goals. I'm going to tell y'all right now, one of the best things I think I ever did, and this might sound so silly and corny, one of the best things I think I ever did was download a habit tracker. I use a habit tracker. I don't remember what it's called. I'll probably put the interface here so you guys can see it. Maybe I'll share the link with y'all in the description box. But this app was a way for me to make small changes for the larger goal. Whether like the things that I track in my app, I will in my account are like waking up and doing a morning prayer before I go to bed, doing an evening prayer every day. Like starting really simple, getting 7,000 to 10,000 steps in a day, starting off really simple. Even if I can't get to the gym, or even if I can't do like a hardcore workout, I've at least managed to make a certain amount of steps in a day. I track my water. Hard for me to follow sometimes, but the fact that it's in my tracker lets me know that I'm setting up small, sustainable goals that can get me to a better outcome. And to be honest, it's working for me. And it makes me feel, now that I have these smaller goals in place, I don't feel bad when I miss it. If I miss a day of prayer, or if I miss a day of not, I also like track reading 30 minutes a day, whether it's the Bible or whether it's a novel. I don't beat up on myself because I haven't made a goal that was extremely unattainable. It is something that is reachable, and it is something that if I know that I am consistent with, it will stick. And when it sticks, I am successful. So that is one of the things, is just like making more attainable goals for yourself. And that basically helped me with the procrastination. Also, in a way, helped me with managing relationships, not the app itself, but making smaller goals for myself. Realizing like if I'm not setting up time to see a person, man, like a romantic interest or a friend, helped me reevaluate the situation, helped me get smarter to think about what I'm valuing and what I'm not valuing. Maybe even questioning if I'm valuing the right things or not. Perhaps maybe I have a friendship that is worth investing more time into. I'm going to have an episode about friendships. That's important. Something is important. It's a lot there. Anyways. So yeah, managing smaller attainable goals. Helpful. Common sense stuff. I don't think I'm saying anything here that's groundbreaking. But sometimes like hearing it is effective, because I remember being in a place of like not knowing what to do about anything because I was depressed. And I also wasn't able to just like think for myself. I was like reaching for external validations that would push me in a direction, but like none of that matters unless you're going to actually make steps to doing something about the changes. When it comes to my pattern of negative self-talk, also learned a trick. Also something that I track in my habit tracker. Ding. I had to start from scratch because changing mental patterns are like very hard. And it's not even that it's just hard, but it takes, along with everything else, a lot of consistency, conscious effort to, in moments of doubt, graduate to a reversal of that mindset. And so what I had to start doing, which was another tip from my therapist, was just journaling. Y'all gonna hate me because this is what every person says, but it's literally gratitude. I remember there were times where I felt like I couldn't be grateful for anything, which is crazy. One of my episodes, I talk about like just being grateful for this bed that I sleep on, the house, the roof over my head, the people in my life, basics. But like there was a point in my life where I was not able to see the beauty in those things, where I was not able to be grateful for those things, which are not to be taken lightly. I bought myself a journal, and sorry, I'm checking myself out. This hair, I'll be 2 seconds from putting this hair up in a clip. But anyways, I had to start off small. And so every morning after like a workout, like whether that was could have just been walking, I'd come home, I'd shower, I'd sit at this desk, and I would start off small. And I started to write like this. Like I would journal and make small statements of who I am. And the I am might even be something that I'm not yet, but something that I'm forcing myself to speak into existence. So I would write stuff like, I am a woman who is not depressed, who sees the light in all of her days, who is grateful for XYZ. I am a woman who is appreciated and loved by those around her. I am a woman who feels good about her body and her mindset and about where she's going in life. I am a woman who has vision and excitement for what's in my future. Doing that, especially if you're someone who like enjoys journaling, which I do, but I never was consistent with it. Doing that and then reading back on them is shifting and changing. And I think when you do that on a consistent basis, you start to realize when you're not doing that in your mind outside of the writing. So perhaps maybe I had eaten something or had said something that I shouldn't have said or had thought a thought that wasn't the greatest. I have the conscious awareness because thoughts are like flies, in and out, in and out, in and out. And I was starting to gain the ability to have the conscious awareness to change my thought patterns because I was every day actively making a choice to see the good in the day, whether it had started yet or whether it was the end of it. Making a conscious choice to do that. It's possible. And obviously another thing is like, I realize, and I don't ever want it to sound like I am someone who's made all this change by myself. I know for a fact that if it were not for my dear Lord, if it were not for Jesus Christ, I might still be stuck. This page might not exist. The positivity that I'm able to exude might not be here. So none of this is without the protection, the guided footsteps that my Lord has placed in front of me, that goes without saying. That goes without saying. My deep connection, my choice to prioritize all the other things, my choice to prioritize him over all the other things is what actually allowed all the other things to flip and start working for my good. Don't ever get it twisted. If it were not for his goodness, I'd still be stuck. So I'm curious, what are some things, some patterns that y'all have? If I haven't touched on them, what are some patterns that y'all have that you have learned, a skill that has taught you to escape the pattern? A routine that has gotten you out of your negative pattern. I would love to know, share with me. Maybe there are some things that I forgot. There might need to be a part 2 on this. Because I'm only talking, of course, up into this stage in my life. And I'm sure there is more lessons, many more patterns, many more opportunities for me to grow. But I hope that this was helpful. I hope that I have fulfilled the request by my poll. Thank you guys for being active there, by the way. I ask that you continue to look out for my stories and continue to stay active with me so that I can continue to deliver the conversations y'all want to talk about. Do not forget, once again, to like this video, to subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out to gain more access, to have more people hear me so that they can feel seen. Ultimately, that is my goal. I want as many people as possible to feel seen because I remember times where I felt invisible. That is my goal. Thank you guys for watching. Talk soon. Until next time.